fancy intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
All right, everybody, welcome to the state of the game here for, technically we're in June now. We're going to be covering a lot of May content. We've got the famous cat himself over there, Ultimate DJ. We've got EcoBoost Engine, our favorite content creator, manager person. Is he our favorite DJ? Is he?
No.
I mean, he's like,
Andrew Beck.
And of course, we got everybody in chat. Welcome in, y'all. How are y'all doing? Glad y'all enjoyed the intro. That was Halo, if y'all had no idea. Some of y'all, I guess, aren't gamey/nerdy enough, but that was Halo. So, okay, so, gentlemen, this has been a while. So, first off, how have both of you been?
Good.
I've been pretty good. I don't remember how to do this.
It has been a while, hasn't it?
DJ, you've had 4 months to prep for this, and you still have the picture of an engine up. Hello, everybody.
You know
Hello,
where
everyone
we're going
in
to
chat.
start.
Hello, I know we've been chatting a lot recently. Where do you want to take us on this mythical journey, Rev Deuce?
Well, first off, you already know the answer because we've discussed what we're going to talk about before the show. But here's a big one. Where the heck have all the CMs been? Number one.
Where have we been?
Where have you
Where
been?
have we been? All right. So, mentioned this on DJ's podcast a little bit, and I didn't give like all of the info there because I knew we were having state of the game. So to clear the air, no, we have not been hiding. No, we have not been trying to give less information for any reason. Things are still very much the same. It honestly has just been, Beck and I have been really busy the past couple of months. The nature of our responsibilities and what we've been doing and how we've been integrated in with the team has been evolving for the better. And so we've just been focused a lot on new things that we weren't focusing on a few months ago. And, you know, it's not fair. Like, we shouldn't be stopping communication. We shouldn't be in Discord less. We shouldn't be on Reddit. You know, it's just one of those things where it just sort of like, slowly we got more and more stuff until we realized like, oh wow, we have a lot going on.
That kind of brings in the next part of that then, because you and I, us three were talking before the show, you know, we've as a community gotten used to a certain level of communication each month, good or bad. If that's not happening, what do y'all do to fix that going forward? I mean, is it a personnel issue? Is it, you know, just needing
get
more
another
people?
body in the room? Yes.
Yeah. Hire more people.
You know, if you think even just 6 months ago, what we were doing versus now, you know, we started putting out consistent video content with the briefing room and captain's log and showcasing more behind the scenes stuff around 6 months ago. And then we started doing patch notes videos. And I don't know if everyone remembers the first patch notes video. It's kind of just me and Beck reading the patch notes that we had written. And it's dramatically changed since then. And that's literally because of the fact that the other teams, you know, engineering, design, production, they saw what we were doing. They're like, these are awesome. We want to help you guys make them even better. How can we do that? And once ever we start getting put into a process so that we can make things better, that just increases how much time those things take, right? Also, just the nature of what we've been doing has been shifting a lot, you know? And I was saying this on DJ Show, it's not because the team hasn't wanted, you know, a big, strong community presence when we're talking about things coming in the future, about what's going to be happening, about how we're making certain decisions, but it does take time for processes in a big organization with hundreds of people amongst a lot of teams. It takes time for those processes to change. And we've really been sort of integrated into that within the past 6 months or so, I would say, which means that my calendar is generally like 5 or 6 hours of meetings, which is like a great thing, right? But it does mean that less time to like hang out and chat and give information in real time in Discord. So how are we going to fix it? Nothing is confirmed yet, but there have already been discussions about bringing another person onto the community team to be focused on the level of communication everyone expects. So being in Discord, responding to social media comments, making sure announcements are going out extremely timely, things like that.
And DJ, just because we're going question by question, do you have any thoughts, comments, etc. about just the CMs not being around the past month and what they can do moving forward?
Well, I mean, you know, it's a tough situation to be in because privately we do get more communication with the Scopely team, and you know, Rev, you and I, like, we have had still scaled back access to the community management team, but we still have heard from them a little bit more than the community has, and so it's kind of tough to put myself in the community shoes. But you know, then again, like when we look at the fact that there haven't really been those kinds of hangouts, those chats, and I get it. I understand that you guys are super busy. It's just one of those things where, like, okay, now we recognize it, and what, you know, like Rev said, what can we do about it? So if we're gonna put another body in the Discord, I think that's great. Let's not try to wait 6 months for something like that, you know. But sadly, here's the reality though, Rev. To hire somebody, onboard them, train them, you know, I mean, we are looking at some time. So, Echo, my bigger question is, I'm glad that you guys have recognized the need for additional bandwidth in community management, but if you posted the job tomorrow, it would be 6 months. So what are we supposed to do in the meantime?
Well, it's exactly that. Like, Beck and I have also, it's one of those things where, like, it's, the analogy that I've heard is like you put a frog in a boiling pot of water, they jump right out. But if you put it in a cold pot and then slowly turn up the heat, it will eventually stay in the boiling water. I think it was really much one of those situations where, like, Beck and I started getting a little bit more each week. Every day we kind of had something else that we were getting ourselves involved in until we got to this point where we're like, oh shoot, like we should be better, right? Yeah. And so I think that now that we've recognized it, I think that Beck and I, at least in the interim, can make a real effort at making sure we aren't dropping that. You know what I mean?
All right. I mean, it works for me. Like DJ, my biggest concern is going to be a time thing. And if the overlords have you doing even more than you were doing before, it's a good thing that the players got used to a certain level of communication, specifically when things went wrong. You know, and of course, on tonight's episode, we will talk about a couple of things that were issues this last month, and communication felt like a little bit of lack in those. So I guess just if there's anything concrete you could provide, whether, you know, I know you don't like just issuing promises and stuff, but, you know, can just moving forward, even until we get a body, can we just get, you know, an acknowledgement, and beyond acknowledgement, just I don't want to say a personal promise, but just, we don't want the players missing over the next few months the communication that they truly need and deserve.
This is something that's literally, like, I'm directly responsible for, right? So I can make a promise that I am actively going to try and be better than I have been over the past couple of months, right? I'm giving context on what I'm doing, and I think, DJ, we can probably talk a little bit about it now because we talked about it on your show, but just to give context in the sort of conversations and things that are going on is, like, remember the artifact gallery, right, DJ? Yeah. And us talking about that for probably, like, what do we have, like a 3-hour meeting on it?
We did, and you know, I did kind of reveal that, and we kind of talked about it on the podcast a little bit. That's an example of what I'm saying. Like, you've been a little bit more available to us internally, as compared to the community, and I acknowledge that. But you know, not everybody is privy to that, you know, and they don't get to experience that. That being said, I absolutely agree that I can see the impact that you're having within these various teams, and I think if the community looked closely, we probably could acknowledge that as well. For example, Rev, like the mid-month patch changing, you know, the logistics, really, the entire loop, kind of in a certain way, of the artifact gallery only 10 days in. I actually find that to be praiseworthy because they were positive. There were positive changes, and those positive changes weren't for, you know, they weren't a just knee-jerk reaction or a flip of the switch. They were thought out. They were discussed. They were consulted. They consulted with us, and I feel like that was a thoughtful, intentional change that was actually for the good of everybody. And I know that Echo was involved in that. And so I find that to be a good thing. I know that your level of influence is growing with these teams, and I think that's good. It's just, the players do want to hear from you. I think it's just comforting, right, for them to hear that.
And that was something that you even raised to me, DJ, when we were having these talks. You would say, people, and I guess I just didn't fully understand when I do come out and sort of calms, or at least reassures people, right? And I was like, because I remember I asked you and Rev, like, probably at least once every couple months, I was like, hey, how's the community team doing? Are you seeing positive change? And I remember you saying, like, DJ, like, I see everything you're doing. I know the level of impact you're having, but I can't say that, and nobody else can see it, right? So, yeah, I just need to be better about managing my time, I think. And that is something that I can actively promise to try and be better about.
And to cap that off, Rev, like, and you and I both know this, and this is what I'm saying, that I hope the community can kind of recognize, or maybe have a little bit of faith, even in the content creators, when we would tell you this, even if maybe you don't see it all the way. But here's how I know that Beck and Echo are having more influence in these teams, and Rev, you would probably agree, is the level of consultation and or changes that are happening within a certain time frame. Like, it used to be, Rev, that we would ask for something, and if it ever came at all, it would be 6 months plus. Yeah, and now we're seeing, some positive changes in a much quicker time frame. We are seeing certain types of mechanics in the game kind of slowly become standards, and without towing the line too much, Echo, Rev, you know all too well that game design and Echo and live ops, they came to us, I guess, earlier this week, and we were able to discuss a change that is being implemented for the upcoming arc. And I think that is proof of the kind of cooperation that Echo is having with some of these other teams, because these other teams now are starting to trust and starting to listen when we say, because it used to be, Rev, we would say, oh, that's a terrible idea. And they were like, oh, it'll be fun. And they do it. And guess what? It ends up being a terrible idea. And
hell, Gabe used to, or Eco used to do that with us.
I also did definitely need some time to fully understand the game better too. So,
and I do feel I feel like that level of trust is getting better. Like, if we say, Rev, and you and I both did it earlier this week, this is a bad thing, and Scopely's like, oh, cool, all right, then let's make it better. And they have, and it will launch that way. And I find that to be positive, and I think that Echo has a lot to do with that.
Well, let me just keep us on track in terms of talking about feedback. We were just talking about the artifact gallery, and we did have some really good changes to that here recently. But one piece that hasn't been changed, let's just talk about this mechanic as a whole. And I think it's important to talk about because we're still in Voyager. Voyager Part 2 is launching this upcoming week. So with that in mind, one of the biggest pieces of feedback for the artifact gallery was the 3-day cooldown. That's something that players feel like, one, you're going to have a lack of participation in it because we have so many players that have just got hundreds of thousands of that currency now. So what's the point of running more of those formation armadas? And on the flip side of that, we also have the, incredibly slow drip, arguably one of the slowest uncommon armada drips in the game, maybe the slowest uncommon armada drip in the game. Two very big pieces of feedback about brand new content. What is Scopely discussing about changing those based on player feedback?
Absolutely. Before I answer this question, Rev, do you mind if I just close out the last one really quick with just one thing?
Yeah, go for it.
So, I mean, you and DJ are both saying, like, the level of influence that we're having, these types of things. And I just want to, like, make it abundantly clear that no team member internally has ever not wanted to work with myself or Beck or hear feedback or things like that. To be clear, it just, like I was saying before, it takes time for the process that has been set in stone for years to change based off of sort of what Beck and I are working towards. So I just wanted to give that point. But it has been really cool to see the evolution of just the whole entire Star Trek Fleet Command team, and I'm glad that you both feel like you've seen some positive changes. That's really great for me. All right, going into the thing that you asked about, Rev, is the formation armadas, both the artifact turn-in and the directives. So the turn-in, that is something that we just see, right? We got people with hundreds of thousands of these tokens ready to turn in, and they just can't, right? So we are looking at a couple of different solutions for that, whether it be lowering the timer or doing something like a bonus refinery that runs for an extended period of time. I'm not talking like 3 days. I'm talking like potentially quite a few. Again, nothing set in stone. But
would that be like a monthly type bonus refinery specifically for the artifact buildings? It's just one time a month that comes around, you'll be able to dump extra into it?
Right. Again, it's still like being discussed, but that's sort of the idea, is like give a avenue for players to invest more of these currencies quicker sometime during the month, right? So that people aren't just sitting on these gigantic stockpiles, right, for no good reason. And they can't do something, because I know that there's feedback on formation armadas as a whole, like they're very complicated. It's a lot of organization, but we have seen a lot of people also saying like the new way of thinking about like working with your alliance and just sort of the strategy they present is interesting. So that is something that we want to have implemented in very, very quickly. Again, also when it comes to the directives, so those are the two things we're looking at: timer or bonus refinery. That is basically what we're working towards right now.
Those are like the changes you're considering. Do we either do a bonus refinery or actually lower the timer itself for the building?
Right. I think that there's more, like there's nothing guaranteed yet, but those are the two ones that we're currently talking about. If we find something even more elegant or better for everybody, we could do that, but that's like what's currently on the docket.
And just to make sure everybody has kind of like a specific for the directives themselves, as we assume, now this is just conjecture, but there's uncommons. That seems to imply at some point we'll see rare formation armadas, maybe even epics. Well, to do that loop, if it's how any other loops are, I know, right? Big shocker. To do that loop, we're going to assume we need to use uncommons to then work towards rares and work towards epics like it is everywhere else. So is there anything concrete being developed and discussed to actually increase the amount of directives being sourced through regular or uncommon formation armada so that we can see that not be such a dragged out thing in the future?
Nothing is concrete. Like next month, you're going to get to a week instead of one. There's nothing concrete. But again, just like the tokens, that is something we're acutely aware of. And we've talked about just sort of the roadmap and production timeline. And it's just one of those things where also the team likes to get data. Like, and this was something that we even talked about, DJ, ourselves. It's like, okay, like how often are people like 100% completing all 3 nodes? Is it like a 80% type thing? Things like that. But just like you've been playing the game, both of you have been playing the game since launch at least. Just like normal armadas, the amount of directives that were given out drastically changed from then to now, right?
Yeah.
So that is, we're constantly planning on iterating and looking at how much we're giving, the stats around that, and then how we can improve an iteration to a feature that people seem to be really positively liking for the most part. There's obviously both sides of the coin here, but yeah.
I mean, I would say just going by DJ's community, my community. What?
Oh no! I was just gonna say, are you doing one right now? But no, I was
No. I just had the background. But just kind of giving that as just discussing that, and we just finished our player poll with my community. I know we've had some discussions in DJ's community as well, but the Formation Armada's got a very positive review from players in my survey polls that we put out in over the past week. We started that Monday, it ran through Wednesday, and it was something like right at 50% of the player base who participated gave it an A or a B, which is a pretty positive review, and very, very small percentages just hated Formadas. And it definitely depends on what server you're on. My server in particular, nobody really struggled with the organization aspect and the finding them and procking them. And that's us, but we also do a lot of armadas already. And I know that's not a universal experience for everybody else out there. And DJ, I'm not sure how much y'all's alliance was doing formation armadas, but I know a lot of our players ran into the issue of now they are sitting there with just a backlog of directives, well, not directives, but currency for the new building.
So even if they had the direct, like that's the thing is like there's two distinct problems here. It's one, how often can we do them? And like two, should I even do them?
Mhm.
And I think that's the should I even do them is the thing that I think is more concerning, right? Like if you have a stockpile of these currencies and you just don't feel the need to ever do them because you're set for the next 8 months, like that is something that we should be, and we are currently talking about, like I said, with like the potential of a bonus refinery or making cooldown shorter, something along those lines. Again, as I always say, and I'm sorry I always say it, just nothing's confirmed yet.
DJ, you got
My
anything?
my take on this is slightly different. I mean, it leads to the same outcome, but the sourcing of the directives to me feels like the bigger issue. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is engagement, right? Like if there's a new feature out, and especially if you're a player that does enjoy it, because it is different. It is a different Armada target than any other target. Like we've broken this down very, very detailed on our show, that this is not just send the biggest ship or solo anymore, because there is a calculation of shards, of direct pay shards that comes from doing this properly. And to not do it properly actually takes shards out of the economy, right? So for me,
yeah, this is the conversation we had.
Yeah, so for me, the turn in is obviously a thing, but why is it a thing? To me, it's a thing because it is a bottleneck of us acquiring the reward from the formation armadas, which are indeed the artifact shards. For me to run them, the reason I'm running them, aside from enjoyment, is to earn the artifact shards. And as we have talked greatly about, Rev, I mean, we know that it's unlikely that this is the first and only introduction of artifacts in the game. And even now, there's multiple tens of thousands of shards available, right? Like, I mean, that's what you would have to earn. So when you look at the grand scheme of things, Echo, like the acquisition of the shards, while it was, I think, good in month one, because typically you guys are conservative in month one, and that's what I'm hoping for, is kind of what you just said. Typically, things do iterate and get a little bit better over time, but this is a huge piece of content. It's a very long-term piece of content, and I don't want to, like we did with Syndicate, I don't want to get into the position where players look at this and say, okay, it is so long that there's no point in doing it because 7 years from now, it's not going to matter. And that is kind of where I'm at with the directives, not only because people enjoy running them, but directives are, I mean, they're the best source of the artifact shards right now. If you complete all 3 legs, that is where the shards are coming from. And because of the cooldown on the chest, you're not getting nearly as many shards from that. So the most number of shards comes from the actual directive starts, and that's why I would like to lean more towards the directive sourcing, because at the end of the day, we've got a lot of shards to source, and that's the fastest way to do it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at your community survey results, Rev. And thank you, as always, for sending me these results and putting things together and getting it in front of me. Artifact Gallery had a 35.5% A grade with a 39.6% B grade. Formation Armadas were 37.1 B, 14.5% A. So it's...
Well, I'll tell you the big thing for me.
From this, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know everyone has their own opinions. It's like more people than not are enjoying this, and it's just these fine tunes and iterations to success to sort of make it feel more whole is the big feedback, correct? Just at the roots of it.
That's definitely a big piece. And I also think one thing that threw it into such a positive was the fact that the artifact gallery is arguably, in terms of features that have rolled out, maybe the most complete lore-friendly feature in terms of Star Trek that's ever really come to this game, not counting like ships that have released. In terms of something that y'all made that's just 100% straight from literal episodes from various series, that draws a lot of the Star Trek people who really love it, including myself. And I think that raised your grade quite a bit for the artifact gallery specifically.
Huge shout out to the art and narrative team. Like, each one of those artifacts is just so spot on, it feels like.
Well, I mean, they're pulled from actual episodes. There's multiple that I know what episode they're coming from. So
So
I think that has a lot to do with it. We even talked about that, Rev, where, you know, like you say, people know where this stuff comes from. They can cite the episodes that it comes from, and it is very familiar. The super Trek nerds out there really enjoyed that, and you know, crazy enough, there's a lot of us,
Yep.
and that being such a recognizable, you know, pitter patter in your heart, like I remember that episode, or this is what, you know, there's been some great conversations within my community this month just about some of the episodes that this stuff came from. So again, I agree. Big shout out to the narrative team, because it really was spot on. There's a lot more that can come,
for sure.
you know, as far as other ideas, but that only will exacerbate the problem of being able to earn more shards as well. So, but yeah, no, narratively it was really good. The other thing that I want to draw attention to, and this is going to represent the other half of the community, Rev,
Yeah.
I think is, I believe, Echo, based on some of the feedback that I've gathered, that the biggest reason that people may not have liked it is just simply that it was another Armada.
Oh, there's definitely Armada fatigue in the game, 100%. Hell, I even made a video about it.
Yeah, I don't want this feedback. Like, the feedback is great, but I you know, I talk about this all the time about misinterpreting the feedback.
Yeah.
I would be really scared for Scopely to be like, oh, they love Armadas, let's do 5 more guns.
No.
That's not the message that we're sending. The message that we're sending is that this was creative, this was narratively interesting, and it was different enough for us to be able to enjoy, and the rewards are enough for us to be able to enjoy this mechanic.
Agreed.
But please do not let it fall on deaf ears that we are probably, for the community, for the half of the community that did not like this feature, I can tell you that it's probably because it was an Armada.
Yeah.
I can 100% guarantee that this has been talked about. That feedback point about,
I mean, we would hope
the other
so.
side about, like, you know, well, I mean, let's just talk about the negative side, right? Like, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. The negative side is that, one, they're hard to do if you don't have a alliance like yours, Rev. That's just snap on it, right? It's really, you got to coordinate a lot. And two, it feels like just another Armada, right? Like, we have normal FKRs, we've got Swarm, we've got board cubes, we've got expansion cubes, we've got solo Armadas, we have formation Armadas now. That topic has been discussed.
Yeah, there's definitely a need for, when features are rolling out, for them to be new features, not copy paste features. And honestly, there's a lot of Armadas that are currently in the game that really just need to be scrubbed and retired. Not any of the new ones, obviously, but I mean, Doomsday Armadas, I don't really see us ever reinvesting in that, but every now and then we actually still get events about Doomsday Worms and Doom Armadas, Mega Cubes. A lot of that just doesn't even really need to still be a thing in the game. Clear a lot of that old content out, and that takes away some of the burden, especially takes away some of all those ridiculous currencies we got to keep, you know, ahead of. But
yeah. Wait, am I crazy? There's board cube, the Mega Cubes. Those are just board cube Armadas, correct? Am I wrong in that?
Well, I mean, board cubes are two different things than Mega Cubes.
Is this me not understanding the lore well enough?
Well, no, not really. But it is maybe not knowing the full history of this game, that the Mega Cube, even the changes that were made to the Mega Cube, Rev, now like a year and a half ago, like even that change is irrelevant today because of sourcing from like the Vidar and the Vidar Talios and research. You know, I mean, the big thing with the Mega Cube was always active nanoprobes. And at a time, that was the huge premium. We were talking about this here, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. Like, do you guys remember in the community, like a million bonus points, if anybody can remember how many active nanoprobes actually came in a $100 pack when this feature was launched? Like, it would blow your mind. And for the record, I don't know if, Rev, are you getting any answers because I can't see your screen, but the answer was like 6,500. And now active nanoprobes are not the bottleneck anymore, and that does make the Mega Cube irrelevant. So,
well, our friend Bubba Joe said it was 4,800, which I was
48.
I was close to
Bubba
that
Joe's
number.
always right. I don't question him.
Well, it's funny because I actually just got the collective bargaining away team. So, fortuitous that popped up as we're talking about this. And that critical is going to pay me $42,000. So.
And that's just it. So you're right. Some of this content is no longer relevant and probably can be scrubbed. But I warned Scopely on retiring one Armada to replace it with another Armada.
Yeah.
And I feel like we as a community may be kind of reaching the end of I don't know, maybe our patience is a kinder word of putting it, but like we really need a new, fresh mechanic in the game that is not an Armada. And so I'm going to ask a question which was not on our list, and you probably can't answer, but I mean, there has to be something new and innovative, at least on the whiteboard, right? Like, you guys know you can't just keep launching Armadas.
Without giving up too much information, again, anything that's on the roadmap, even internally, is subject to change. But I can say that there are some very interesting things planned that are new to Star Trek Fleet Command.
And not an Armada.
And not assaults.
Wait, you guys don't like assaults?
My blood, my vein in my forehead.
I don't want DJ to crash as he's driving.
He's trying to trigger me right now.
But that is a big key that we've been, and look, that's why I put out the video last month about Armada Fatigue, because it's not even that formation armadas as a mechanic is bad, because I don't think it is. I don't really have an issue with the mechanic. I know some people maybe don't like that it's only 4 ships per slot, stuff like that, but as a mechanic, there's nothing really wrong with it. It's just, oh yay, another Armada, right? So
right.
My desire to clean up the old ones isn't just so we can make room for new ones. It's so that we don't have 18 types of Armadas in the game. We have maybe 10, 12, and we actually use the ones that we have, and then we create new content that isn't based around the same mechanic that we've been playing on for chat 3.5 years. We did have to go through a whole year of coming soon. I know it's before Eco's time, but we've had them for a while now, and they've kind of lost the excitement that they once provided.
All that being said, Echo, I don't want to take away from what I do consider to be a success this month. I do think that the formation armadas were largely a success. Yeah, I think they were largely a success. They were innovative enough that they're not, just hated. That being said, like it's just enough. You know what I'm saying? But I don't want to take away from what they did. The artifact gallery is a win. I love the artifacts. The formation armadas are different enough, and the strategy is different enough to be interesting as compared to some of the others. So I don't want to ignore that 50% that did really like it, because I was with you. I did really enjoy them this month. I just, want to make sure that the feedback is clear that, like, that's not a green light for 7 new Armadas.
I'm only talking about this specific feature, and I think it's good to talk about both sides of it. And I understand both sides of feedback, and Beck and myself have talked about that, with the big one being, there are quite a few armadas in Star Trek Fleet Command now, currently.
Well, let me segue us into a more sensitive topic, but one that we definitely need to hit on, especially with this being the first state of the game in months.
No.
Wow. Thank you. You've already said you do this conversation, so just tough it out.
All right.
STFC.space.
This was, it was. Okay. Yeah.
That was literally just this month. What do you mean? Did you burn it out of your memory already?
The question was there. Yeah.
And don't worry, Benny, we're also going to discuss the multi-level primes tonight as well. But STFC.space. First, let's hit on probably one of, there's several, but biggest things. Events page, when coming back?
Events page is literally the thing that we're trying to get out the quickest. I don't want to speak for Ripper. Ripper had a very elegant solution on how the events page was just facilitated, right? And if Ripper wants to go into that, he can. But as you can, I don't know if anyone noticed, we didn't make a big call to action about, just because, there's a certain level of what everyone wants and has expected STFC.space to be. STFC.space right now is loading a lot faster, pretty much instantly. A lot of the assets and things that were missing have been replaced, and the team worked hard to make sure that all of that stuff was done, right? Yeah. So the thing that we are driving towards right now as we speak is get the events page out and try to make it will at least be the standard that Ripper set, but we're going to try to see if we can even make it potentially better. But yeah, that's what we have. It's
Can I ask a follow-up on that? Because
DJ, I literally go and I get all this information, and then follow-ups make me sound like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, no, I think it's directly related to what you just said. For example, and I say this from a player perspective who literally relies on STFC.space. I mean, even not just as a player, but even as a content creator, that is such a crucial tool. And
yep.
we've joked and we've talked even publicly and privately that even the Scopely team uses STFC.space. Customer support will send responses to tickets with links to STFC.space.
I use STFC.space.
Everybody does. So I might be hypersensitive to this, and I'll apologize if I am, but what improvements are you trying to make? Like, just make it work the way it did, and I think people will be pretty daggone happy. So when you say you guys are trying to make improvements, what is it we're talking about?
Again, the goal right now is to get STFC.space out exactly as everyone expects to do it, and then make improvements over time. I'm just saying right now the events page and getting it functional is the top concern for us right now.
And then after that, hopefully actually after that, then you'll roll out new things like fleet commanders.
Right. I think that was actually one of your other questions, Rev, about like improvements in the future. Like, are we going to see fleet commanders, or like when we have new innovative features, are we going to try and get those into STFC.space? All of those questions are yes. Like, if we have something new, we want to get it into STFC.space. Like,
the key is definitely getting STFC.space working as it should first. Is there any type of timetable that Scopely is willing to provide on when that will actually happen?
No, not right now, because I don't have the timetable and I couldn't ask the engineers for more information. They literally gave an update about some other stuff today, and they're working again. Within a I think everyone remembers the day that sort of everything sort of came out, right? I think the engineering team like had a bunch of different adjustments and fixes to like decrease the loading time and get all the assets in within like 2 days tops. So just to sort of showcase the urgency and understanding that the first and foremost goal is get STFC back to where everyone expects it to be.
DJ, you got anything else?
I hear you, and I guess this is just this is a sore spot with me. But like for example, the events tab is a huge one. Okay, I'll agree, it's a huge one. But it can't. There's so many things. Like, and I know you say, well, we fixed this, we fixed that, and we fixed this. But like yesterday or the day before, Rev, I went on there to look at a level 9 to create hostile. Level 9, and you can go to the hostiles page right now and type in to create hostile, like just TAK or TEK on front of my game. I mean, either way, they're not there. There's so much still missing.
I think another one was blueprint cost was missing from a lot of the ships as well. I mean, stuff like that.
There's so much stuff missing. The research tab. Now, granted, this is relatively new content, but I know what I'm saying, and I apologize if this sounds harsh, but Ripper would have had an artifact. Ripper would have had an artifacts tab by now. Why isn't there an artifacts button? Like when we're trying to sort through, like the artifacts are in the research, but I have to search it by name. There's no way to call it up in a category. And I just feel like that kind of stuff, like that should be simple. Like an artifacts tab. Like if you guys add a research tree, it gets a new tab. Well, artifacts need a tab. and there's not one. And I know that might be petty, but I mean, when I'm looking for artifacts, when I'm looking for information, STFC.space is not easy to use right now, and it's not just the events tab. Like, there are multiple other failures within this project, and I'm going to stop now because I know it's still a very sensitive topic for me and a lot of other people, but this
well, I do want to add, DJ, and Ripper actually brought this up in our chat. If you go to the researches page now, they have updated to where artifacts have their own. So they have their own tab now. Artifacts are showing.
Okay, I take it back.
That's a good thing.
48 hours.
So they did add that. I do also want to add real quick, not meaning to make this sound like shade, but I agree with you, DJ, but still, for me, getting everything back to the baseline of where it was is more important than even adding artifacts, which I'm glad they did. But that's got to come first, too, is getting everything back to where it was.
And that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, even hostiles that are missing and blueprints cost that's missing and
multi-language support that's missing, that type of stuff.
That stuff is just, I feel like that is super important. And I mentioned the artifacts tab. I'm glad they did that, but I was trying to illustrate the fact that there are still so many problems with that. And I appreciate that Scopely's trying to tackle it. Your announcement that you wrote the other day kind of indicated that you guys did run into some roadblocks. Are you able to provide any insight into some of the stuff that you guys have tried to overcome and what you're doing to actually make this a seamless transition within Scopely?
The short answer is no. The long answer is, and the context behind that is just like, one, we talked earlier about the bandwidth of Beck and I working on a lot of different things. And so we do a lot of following up, but like, we are not, me specifically, let's just talk about me. Like, I don't know anything about creating a website or code or migrating or any of that. But like I said in my announcement, like, when we first started these discussions, we had an idea in our brain of like how much time it would take and the migration and the process and all these different things. And we quickly realized that the initial timetable that we had just wasn't something that we were going to be able to do, right? So that's just the best information I can give as somebody who just, I don't know websites at all, DJ, unfortunately.
All right. Fair enough. I do want to, because we are at just to give y'all a timer, we're at 45 minutes, which we usually try to get this done around the 1 hour mark. So I want to keep us moving, especially to another sensitive topic. Not that, we want to be negative on the show or anything, but the primes were definitely, these recent primes we just had, the multi-level primes was a big talking point for free-to-play, spenders, everybody in between. Let's jump into that first. Are you ready for that conversation?
Yes, let's do it.
Yes. DJ, you ready for that combo? You still good over there, man?
No, I'm completely fine. With regards
and
to
DJ, to be clear, I do not think you went over the line at all. I think that you care, Rev cares, everyone cares. This really, we understand the importance of this. And like you just said, we all love the site and we want it to be where it was before. So I completely understand. I know you're just being honest, right? And I appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. I'm not. Yeah, I didn't think that I was trying to beat you up or anything. I am like that is. I'm a really, and Ripper's my friend, and so I know that there's disappointment with how that's rolled out. But anyway, moving to the multi-tier primes, Rev, I've got just one simple thing to say about it.
Okay.
It's good for the game, but it needs to be good for everybody.
Correct.
And Echo, that I've been beating this drum crazy loud with anybody that will listen. I mean, I've sent messages to game design. I've sent messages to general management. I've sent messages to roadmap. I've sent messages to you. Like, I've sent messages all over the place with my proposal or my plan for this. First of all, does Scopely have a response to the players who allege that this is a necessary economy fix? What is Scopely's response to why are we charging for something that should have been a quality of life update or even maybe a promised fix to the these economies.
Okay, so multi-part question, and I'm going to start with the first part, which is the sort of question is like, is this the fix for G4 and G5 economy?
Yeah.
And I can say when this was created, this wasn't intended or meant to be the fix for anything. The reason that we looked at these is we've given a ton of ways to increase power throughout STFC, just like holistically, right? And the faction ships specifically are kind of one of the things that received the least amount of love overall. And so we wanted to provide a research that scaled, and it felt good to invest to if players wanted to focus on faction ships throughout the STFC career, and that's the thing where they were like trying to double down their power on, right? And I understand what you're saying, because the other part of the question is, which is what you're alluding to, is that there are problems with G4, G5 economies, correct?
Yeah, I don't think anybody can deny that. Now,
Sure.
I mean, G4 has seen improvement. I don't believe that it's quote unquote fixed, but it has seen improvement. Nobody can deny that. I believe the economy that has not seen any type of adjustment or improvement would be the G5 realm, and it might, the sentiment could possibly exist, Echo, that the fix that was promised for this economy is now being sold.
Yeah, that was, and I can be 100%, again, if I didn't want to comment on something, I would just not comment like I've done in the past, right, DJ? That was not why these were created. I can just say that full stop. Right.
So from that standpoint, though, with that in mind, you know,
Right.
when y'all are looking at the economy, and now we're looking at these primes, and one of the first things DJ said, and I've said it, and just like DJ's been sending stuff out, you know, we both have, you know, we've been really harping on this whole prime issue, and it's honestly gotten a little bit bigger because one thing that I've done is talking with game design about all the old primes that we have that also haven't gotten a path. You know, no matter whether this was intended as an economy fix or not, it is a game changing, in terms of game math, a very positive thing, but in terms of availability, a very negative thing, a game changing addition. And we now have a slew of things that simply aren't able to be attained. You know, when we're talking about from that aspect, you know, where do y'all fall in terms of, hey, can this be a part of a fix that you start sourcing out to everybody? What are we doing from that regard?
So, you know, that is something like this exact sort of conversation of the perception of what these primes are. I think we talked about it at length, what, Wednesday, right? The three of us?
In the podcast?
No, not the podcast, but like
That
the
morning
our
meeting.
meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know we were talking about that.
I mean, it's no
Private
secret that
meeting.
the three of us have private conversations sometimes, right?
Yes.
And so yesterday we were doing some video content, but the plan is for myself to sit down with a lot of the people that are sort of working on the game to really go into and expressing sort of how these primes are being viewed. Because again, like I was saying, like the reason why these were created is completely different from the perception of what people feel these are. And I think that we need to have a very holistic conversation about that, right?
Yeah.
So one, we're going to be talking about that. And two, just what was the other part of that question, Rev?
Well, moving forward, you know, not only these set of prompts, these two, but perhaps in terms of actually sourcing those out to the community.
Yeah.
And honestly, just a little bit, and I didn't give you this specific question, so chat, when Eco doesn't give you a specific answer, blame me. But also, when we're talking about timeframes, because one thing that all players need to acknowledge, and we definitely acknowledge, is that this is a game that's designed to make money. When primes come out, they're always something that is a purchase. You know, you pay to progress faster in the beginning. That's okay. It's a business model. But from y'all's perspective, but what is a timetable of how long something should take before we start looking at, okay, now we start issuing it out to everybody else, because new things come out, making old things, you know, I don't want to say less, you know, not valuable, but maybe they've been dated enough to warrant being accessible by all players.
Right. So, man, that's a hard question. So I'm going to do my absolute best.
That's why you're here. So
no, that's why I'm not going to. That's why I'm going to do my best to not just give a political answer. like you said, the standard is what prime has ever come out with sourcing within 30 days.
Yeah,
In the
for
history of
sure.
sourcing. I know that these are different and that, right, but I'm just saying, like, it's just not something that has been the
Yeah,
standard.
the
Whereas,
only
like,
ones that would have fallen in that category would be the ones that require like G4 or G5 materials. That'd be the only
right.
one.
So there is no
There
timetable.
is technically one other.
Wait, which one?
There was a cloaking prime, a Tetrion prime, that came out when cloaking came out that was sourced in the battle pass free to play. Now I'm not trying to split hairs. I'm just saying there is an example or two or three of you guys providing sourcing if you wanted to, and with these being so magnificently impactful, it seems to me like it would be a higher priority. I mean, even from a game design perspective, the economies now are massively different between players who have these primes and not. I would imagine even from a game design perspective, it would have to become more challenging to keep that in mind, because what you design from the perspective of maybe having this prime or a partial progression through the prime as compared to not having the prime are going to be so worlds apart that there are going to be players who literally cannot participate in newer content or upgrade new things or whatever, simply because the game design scope is now an ocean apart, further than it was at the beginning of this month. So
Right.
even for you guys, I feel like it would be something that I'm not saying that we should have a free, level 5 prime at the end of the month. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm a big fan of transparent day one sourcing. I don't care if the path takes a year, 2 years, whatever, but I, for example, have been very, very praiseworthy of for example, ship sourcing, specialty ship sourcing since the Cerritos. You guys have almost, gosh, dare I say, adopted the pattern of introducing, hey, the Defiant is going to take 100 days. So now you can make your choice. I feel like in that respect, these primes actually take us back a step in player education and educated consumer and making an educated choice as to whether or not we want to engage in these primes or not. But aside from that, they're just so game impactful that you literally created a second game inside these respective economies for players who have it and players who don't.
So I'm gonna touch on the information I can touch on, and also like the information I do have, because I know what you're saying, DJ. I understand from feedback like how these are viewed and just how different or how much of an impact they are. I mean, you both have said to me, and I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to say this, that the math on these are just good. Correct? Am I wrong on that?
Well, neither me nor DJ have tried to deny I mean, hell, when my video came out on these, the first 70% of the video is showing people how good the math is to the game. It's just on the reverse of that. It created so many issues. It was the lack of availability to everybody. It was people had just bought primes a month before, that these have, greatly diminished in terms of how effective those were for $100, $200. And we had several layers to what happened when these released that created so much negative sentiment around them.
Sure. So first, from what I understand, and like, again, I'm not a game designer. This is just like the information I've gotten, and who knows what's going to happen, right? Like right now I can say like there is no like whiteboard plan for a sourcing for these. I understand that there is a lot of desire for it, and this is feedback that I'm going to be talking, but right now I can't say, yeah, in 6 months we're going to have this kind of sourcing for these. That does not exist right now, that from my knowledge. Okay. Secondly, again, I don't know how this impacts game design holistically because I'm not a game designer. But from what I've been told and from what I understand, these primes are not being taken into consideration when designing current and future content. Okay. Again, that is sort of higher than my understanding and knowledge of math and economy. but that is what I've been told. And again, who knows what's going to happen? Like, let's say just everything changes, and this is a massive hypothetical. I'm not saying this will actually happen, but like there becomes a sourcing pattern, and you can get X amount, and then that does change the economy differently, right? And that is something to take into account. But baseline, how things are, and again, no information on what may happen because there is no plan to source these right now. From what I understand, they aren't being taken into account when setting GD stuff.
Well, honestly, in terms of that particular point, I would hope not, because if you were doing that, then that would basically say, hey, you spent the money to do this, and now we're taking away how effective they could be long term. And I don't think that, hopefully, y'all wouldn't do that. But in terms of the sourcing itself, and I know, acknowledging what you're saying about we
are actively talking about them, though,
yeah, and that's kind of what I want to bring up, because I know I've had a lot of talks with you. We talked Wednesday about this. I've had talks with game design about it. And it's a conversation being had about this. And if they were to do it, how long would we really, space this stuff out? And if we did it, how far would we take the free to play? Would we take the free to play path all the way, none of the way, et cetera? When y'all are having these talks, how much of the player feedback, and just give your personal experience from dealing with players and seeing what players are saying, how much of player feedback is swaying y'all or not swaying y'all? I mean, do you think this is an issue that needs to be addressed in this way? Or do you think that it's, Rev and DJ getting angry for no reason?
I don't like to devalue or say that you shouldn't be feeling X way one way or another. I think that if anybody is feeling some kind of way, it's worth being discussed and understanding the root cause of it. It's like, that's what me and Beck always try and do. If people are providing feedback about why something is not ideal, like we try to understand the baseline cause of that frustration, right? And that's what we go and we talk about. So, I mean, first and foremost, I want to just say, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there's been quite a few changes just in the past few months that have been directly related from state of the game, community members, content creators, correct? So by you saying, are they valuable? I would say, yes, they're absolutely valuable. And we've seen tangible changes because of that, like the most recent one being sort of the artifact gallery, right?
And do you think this is something that could also end up in that same position? Like, do you think that the feedback has been loud and serious enough and earnest enough? Because the truth of it is, a lot of players got so frustrated they took a step back from the game. Now, the hope is that's temporary, they come back, etc. But are you seeing it being a, I hate to use the word pitchfork and torches, because I know that's become kind of like a Star Trek Fleet Command meme, but from y'all's perspective, how serious is this issue? Like, how important are these conversations that need to be had? Is this something that you have to do right now? Do y'all see it as that serious?
I think that it's absolutely something that we want to start talking about sooner rather than later. We definitely see this as something that has caused a lot of conversation and feedback. These were a huge talking point, they're still being talked about, but I think that for that entire week they were released, that was like the topic of conversation, if I'm not wrong, Rev, along with STFC.space. Which is also why, I was saying, one, teams are actively talking about it right now, and two, the community team is setting up a meeting to sort of just at least give insight into how these are being perceived, and I wanted to clear the air here about the intent of why they were created, right? So, yes, this is absolutely something that we want to and are currently having active conversations about.
Well, just to piggyback on that real quick, and this is honestly an opportunity for DJ to also pipe in, but in terms of those players who just, a month ago, or in DJ's case, 2 weeks ago, purchased brand new primes, is there anything being done to maybe compensate those players who just invested a lot of money?
Those are included in the conversations that we are having, because we have also seen the feedback of what gives, I just bought this 10 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
So, basically TLDR, yes, we're talking about literally everything right now in regards to the new ones that have came out, as well as the ones that recently came out with the Picard arc.
And DJ, do you want to jump in real quick?
My perspective on that has been made pretty clear, and I appreciate it being recognized. I guess maybe if I could ask
really fast. Old man saw your DM about your idea and plan for those primes, and he wanted me to tell you that he's read it and that he just is working on getting back to you because it was quite a long plan that you sent him.
DJ putting a long post out? No.
First of all,
just wanted to let you know, he told me to tell you. He saw it. He's not ignoring it. He will be responding.
What's hilarious is DJ sent him the Cliff Notes version.
I did. I actually sent him the shorter version of that. So, no, I'm pleased with that, and I appreciate that, and community for your for your knowledge. I have been obviously very, very loud about this month, and I've taken it very seriously. I've done a ton of research. I've done a ton of math, and I've actually written out several proposals. I mean, Rev, there were 5 different options that I highlighted. I ran out the math, and I don't want anybody to be under the misunderstanding that I'm being reckless or like, for example, for those of you who did buy the Prime, I am not at all interested in devaluing your purchase. I'm very clear on the record in the history of this game at preserving premium access and preserving the incentive to spend and preserving the value for the money that you guys spend. Rev, I kind of joke, and I say this periodically on my show, have you thanked your whales today? Because at the end of the day, your whales are the ones who sustain the game that you guys love and enjoy if you're free to play. So I don't want there to be any misunderstanding on the plan that I've written, and I think that probably also helps Rev the viability. I think that helps the conversation with Scopely, is that I'm not just saying, oh, give it to everybody for free.
For sure.
That is not my plan, but I've written multiple different avenues in this game. There are so many ways in this game to source content that the loop itself, as it currently exists, is maybe not that valuable, or has room for expansion. One of the ideas I had was an away team assignment. Another idea I had, which may not be enticing to some players, but why do we not like expansion cubes? Because they're not worth it. So how about we make them worth it? How many of you guys in the chat, and again, Rev, you could kind of gauge the the initial feedback, because I can't see your screen, but how many of you folks would be more inclined to try to get it together with an expansion cube if it contained prime particles? That was the big complaint with that, Rev, is that it was complicated, but it also wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth trying to get through the complication. So if we look at some of these types of loops, and it doesn't have to be an expansion cube. I mean, it could be. There were 5 different ways that I pitched as to ways that we could do this, and it doesn't even have to be any of those. The bottom line is it can create a conversation about how they can, and don't be under the misillusion that it'll be fast or easy. I do think that it should take time, and I do think that it should not be easy, and I do think that the spenders deserve their premium access. But again, it does. I believe all content in this game should eventually, ultimately be made available to players after their premium access period, and that's kind of what I've been going with. Echo, in response to your comment earlier about the previous primes.
I was literally just speaking of that.
Yeah, my position on that is really, really clear. But I guess I had an unscripted question, and again, community, just like Rev did a minute ago. If Echo can't answer it, then it is my fault. I didn't send this question, but I am sure that some players are curious why this prime would come so soon after its exact duplicate. Like, was there a communication failure? Like, did Team A actually not realize that this prime was being worked on by Team B? Like, because
it's totally possible. I don't want to say it was a communication failure because I don't have all of the insight into like the timing and the rationale behind like that specific thing, right? But the feedback's been heard loud and clear that like they were put out very closely together.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, DJ, the other thing I wanted to touch on was the primes, right? The old primes that have been in the game for a really long time that still don't really have any sourcing. We're actually looking at those right now. Rev, I know that you have a list of basically primes that have been in the game for like, what, 2+ years at least, and they don't have any sourcing available to them right now.
Yeah.
And that is something we're actually looking at and seeing, like, is there something that we can do in the short term for, maybe a handful? No guarantees, but like this prime coming out caused a lot of prime discussions internally. Like,
I mean, I can say from the good side of it, just as in terms of, because we've talked in the show, and it's definitely not to make any of the players feel like they don't have a voice, because I'm very clear that in terms of what anything that me, DJ, any of the content creator moderator have, it's only because the players are backing us. But this prime conversation has spawned into, and I've sent you the list, and I've talked to game design about the list about all the levels of primes that have no path in the game now, including the new ones, but going back to old ones, the prime particle keys for the barrages, and the old prime repairs, and the venoms that came out, and stuff from a year ago, 2 years ago. And these are all things that probably at some point need to get addressed. And kind of like DJ, I'm with him in that the separation, I think, that also made this one so big for a lot of the players is there's one thing for pay to progress, which is allowing spenders to have a little bit of an extra headway and get things early and enjoy their premium time. But it's also eventually all that kind of, trickles down to everybody else. And at the moment, a lot of this stuff doesn't have that at all. And that's kind of what a lot of the players are fighting for. Not that they want to have the same prime the exact same day, because then how does the game ever make money for certain content? But to not have those available ever at some point, or just to be completely undetermined and we never get feedback on it, brings a lot of animosity over the years.
Yeah, and I can say, like, with all the prime discussions we're having right now, this is one of those topics as well, about being like, okay, like, what primes have been out for a long time and which ones have no sourcing currently.
And for those,
and Rev, I know that you worked on that list, and I know that this conversation has surrounded primes, but there are also other things that you could, in theory, categorize as a prime, such as second researcher, second builder, additional dry docks. There are some of these other pieces of content, even certain projectiles and certain utility cosmetics that again, I mean, if we went beyond just research particles, Rev, there's a great deal of content in this game that was likely, I mean, based on the conversations I've had, even with Scopely team members, like, they all acknowledge that we want to circle back to this at some point. But then it does feel like we forget about it, or we get caught up, or we move on to new stuff, and we do forget sometimes to circle back to this stuff. There's I mean, if you're into this thing, there's avatars that have been quote unquote paywalled. There's a lot of content in this game that needs a revisit as far as sourcing some of this stuff. If it is truly Scopely's commitment to eventually make everything obtainable to the broader community, if that's a commitment that Scopely wants to make, it would be very welcome. But it's also a very large task, and I think it's time that we really buckle down and get started with it.
Yeah, and just to throw this out there, I definitely love that you brought up, especially the doc. Not that I'm saying the extra builder and the extra researcher aren't important, but, Eco, we were actually having this conversation a couple days ago, just talking about how many docs it takes to do some of the current material. I mean, I use 6 docs to go do solo armadas. Now, maybe I'm being a little bit of a try-hard there, but I'm taking my 3 main ships, I'm taking the Disco, taking the Cerritos, I'm taking the Titan, the Defiance, one of my Armada ships. So not everybody has access to those. If you are a free-to-play player at level 39, you've got 5 docs, and that's it. So you can't even do what Rev's doing, but you're still expected to participate in solo Armada content. We've been going a while, so I want to get us our last topic in. DJ, I'll expect you to give me what's happening on 15, but Incursions. And I've already kind of brought a little bit of this to you, Eco. I mean, I tend to enjoy Incursions. I love meeting the people. I love the PvP. A big piece of feedback for Incursions was, the rewards, they needed to get better. Lag needed to be fixed. Event scoring. I would say that from what I've seen so far today and talking to, You know, a lot of the servers, for the most part, it seems like there aren't really issues with scoring. Lag is there intermittently, depending on what moment. Severity could be worse or better. But, and DJ, I'm curious because I actually haven't talked to you about this yet. DJ, what do you think about the new rewards? Personally, I don't feel like the rewards move the needle to make people fall in love with Incursions like we want them to. But those are kind of our three big topics for Incursions before we wrap up.
So, with regard to rewards, I can objectively and analytically agree that they are better. However, I agree that I still feel like, you know, for as big an event as this is, and for the fact that it only runs, you know, once a month, and of course it hasn't run for several months,
Yeah.
I still feel that the rewards should be more stout. Now, I do understand the counter perspective of that, which is, you know, it's one day. We're not going to, you know, be able to do 2 weeks worth of currency or a month's worth of currency. But I do encourage an alternative perspective on that, because it is not an event that could run multiple times a month, because it would just die. It is one of those staple foundational events that literally can only run one day a month, and if it is the pure focus of Scopely, you know, on Incursion Day, like if it's that big of a feature, it seems to me like it could potentially have that big of a draw, that big of a carrot. So rewards could be better. The events, I will say, with the events, I can see Scopely's effort to improve them. I do think that there are a few things that were better, Rev. For example, one or two of the solo leaderboards are now focused on the home server, like the defensive server. Like, and I know that I only noticed this earlier in talking with players. Like, I'm on the offensive server. I'm on attack. We're playing server 21. I'm on 15. So server 21 is the defensive server. Server 15 is the offensive. My damage dealer is to be an attacker. The damage dealer for a server 21 player is to be the defender. And those points for either team do not score on server 15. I find that to be good. I find that the defensive points and rating are now equal to, you know, if a player did want to cross over to the attacking server, like that's not in the spirit, I think, of what we were trying to go for, but players do have that option. And if they do, those points are now level. I think that is an improvement. I still think we missed the mark on really drilling down on getting players in the same place, because the fact that you guys allowed scoring on the attack server, which I understand why you guys did, but I still think that while there was improvement made in trying to consolidate players, the simple fact that you guys left that scoring mechanic in place kind of dilutes that effort.
I actually talk about that if you want.
Please do.
Yeah, please.
So there are two things about that specific topic about why the server clash still allowed it. One, while we are trying to thematically, like I've been saying, try to have like you're defending the honor of your server, and then if you're attacking, you're trying to bring glory to yours. We are ignorant to the fact that some people just want to go and cause chaos, right? And so we still wanted to let people go out and cause chaos from like a fundamental level, right? As we're getting feedback, we're hearing that maybe we should just absolutely be doubling down on this sort of attack first defense style and not allow it. And here's the other thing, but to do that, it was going to take a little bit of time, because just the way that the event is baseline created right now, it will need to get modified so that if you go to the other server, no scoring happens at all.
I mean, honestly, for me, I think that's how it should be. And the reason being is there's going to always be a subsect of player who simply do not want to do it at all. And that way it gives them the answer. If you don't want to do it literally at all, just go to the opposite server and sit there, do your dailies, do your mining. And since no points score there at all, it's basically deciding to opt out. And people can do that if they want to. I think that way you have one place you can be if you want to do this, go there and win, lose, draw, win the rewards. That's what I would say. But again, that's just my opinion.
And I agree. When we were leading up to this, I even kind of joked with you, Echo, that it appeared that Scopely was very, very willing to take the ideas that Rev and I had presented regarding this, home field advantage, so to speak, attacker versus defender, and really kind of double down on putting everybody in the same place. I had felt that, by all indications, it looked like from your announcement that was the direction we were going. And I do feel like you guys took a step in that direction, but I just don't think that we were maybe quite, to coin a phrase from Ripper, I don't think we were quite bold enough with that. I think you guys were a little bit timid in trying to make that decision. But one of the things that I would have praised, and one of the things I did praise about that thought, when I thought that that's what you guys were going to do, is because exactly what Rev said, it would have checked a lot of boxes. Even for players who did not want to engage, they had a safe space. And and that is something that Scopely has done before with PvP zones. And so Scopely has in the past provided players of that play style an opportunity to avoid the chaos, and by allowing scoring still on a safe space. Being said, again, and I will say this, I know that there's been a lot of moaning and groaning about Incursions. I do feel that this version is an improvement. And so I'm grateful for the iteration. I'm grateful for the Incursions team, who I've had the opportunity and the privilege of working closely with. I think this is absolutely an improvement. There's no way that it's not, but I think we need to be bolder. I think we need to take it another 2 or 3 steps, because I think that there's more that can be done with this that more players will like, even the ones who don't want to engage, to be able to kind of avoid that chaos and protect themselves is kind of also a choice for engagement, right? So I think that we could do more. But again, I don't want to take away from the progress that was made. Jokingly, I don't know if, I'm sure there were bandwidth issues. I don't know that I feel like this was enough of a reimagining that it, took 6 months, but it was an improvement. And I look forward to continue working with that team to continue to push for more improvements. But I do recognize that this was better, even with the solo leaderboards. The introduction of the Alliance leaderboards for passive play, Rev, Ship XP, and research, I think those are nice.
DJ, honestly, I have a little, I do agree that some of it can be nice. I'm a little hit or miss on the leaderboard rewards. Like one of the ALB is paying out a strike team officer, still where Explorer strike team, where Interceptor strike team. Why are we paying out Axionic chips? It just seems so random. And while you did have slight improvement in terms of the incursion coins, overall, it feels like a lot of the rewards feedback wasn't really heard, I feel, loudly enough. For example, what was one of the primary things if you're a G5 and G4 player out in the chat was, hey, we need Tritanium as a reward for the amount of PvP this calls for. No Tritanium at all as a reward for this. And even the Parsteel rewards are ridiculously low. So I still feel like from a reward standpoint, it's falling really flat. And if your goal is to get people to do these type of events, especially if you're not like Rev or DJ, who just loved PvP in general, there's really no incentive to have that level of participation. And you're going to have people who want to do incursions right now because you haven't seen it in 5 or 6 months. But if it was to run month to month like it is now with only incremental changes, I just see it having the exact same return that we did last year.
And 2 comments to that, Rev, real quick. I agree with you 1,000% on the Parsteel. Like, I really actually feel like that is a mistake. I haven't had a chance to talk to them, but I feel like that's off by a factor of 1,000.
Has to be. 1.2 million Parsteel is what I would get as my top reward at level 46.
Yeah, that should be 1.2 billion. and like mine was, I think, like 36 million. That should be 36 billion. I think that was actually just wrong. I don't know if it was or not, but I mean, that was crazy bad. But with regards to some of the other events and I guess kind of reimagining, like Rev says, you know, that it wasn't enough to get players out there and moving. I think that I think that there needs to be more, you know, with these events. And on, I guess, a side note for that, hey, by the way, shout out to the low G5 players. Our PvP event was absolute trash. And I say that not in a mean way, Echo, but they put 51 through 60 in the same flipping bracket in the same flipping system. I was up there like just sacrificing ships, like and it wasn't cheap. Like you were talking about Tritanium, the lowest ship that I could use was a G4 rare. All right, but I was able to go up all the way against a G5 Epic, and we were in the same PvP system. 51 plus was in the same PvP system. That just for the, I know that there's those issues in G4 as well, but bracketing for G5 has long been a concern and a cry out, even when it comes to auction. But this PvP event was just terrible for mid to low G5 players because there was no segmenting there at all. But aside from those, I mean, I like the change in style for the event, but segmenting and bracketing is still a major concern. That was a very expensive event, Rev, to do with a G4 rare. I had to die like 12 times or 14 times.
And that's all for you to get. That's all I did. What, 1,000 incursion coins and like 3 Una shards? Like, so.
Yeah, and you know what it costs. I mean, it's 150 million Tritanium per repair.
Yeah.
I spent probably 2 to 3 billion Tritanium today to just die to G5 ships. And that is not a good feeling, especially when you look at the rewards that were sourced there.
Agreed. And Eco, that's what we're saying, like in terms of rewards, because end of the day, while I do, and I've been very vocal, and DJ has too, we want Incursions to work. And we've said that. We really want them to work. You can even see the 350 people we have in chat, you know, between just the lackluster rewards. Sadly, right now, we have insane lag on server 20 and 26. I don't know what's going on. Their battles are lasting 45, 60 seconds. But if you really want to incentivize this, I do think that you're moving in the right direction in terms of events. I don't think it's perfect, so I'm not going to try to say that. I think DJ brought up some good points about the parity there and needing to have the brackets really looked at for especially the PvP stuff. But at the end of the day, the only real even value you get from the event store for Incursions is if you need the ships. Because, yeah, you can get 30 blueprints of one of the ships you need, but at the end of the day, you're still getting, if you win Incursions, 7 of an epic officer shard. And when we have these officers that you do this once a month, that's just not enough to really get people wanting to participate in this, especially if they were on the fence or negative about it before.
So a lot was said, and I appreciate all of your thoughts and everything you said. And this is the main thing that I would like to say is, first and foremost, I'm already taking all this feedback so that we can talk to the team about rewards, events, different things like that. Because I can tell you, we want to iterate to success on this. This is not meant to be the final product, okay? We are going to be changing things. Now, the things that we do want to, the things that we were trying to succeed with is it in the right direction? Are we doing the things that where people feel like this is going in a place where they want it to go? And then also, there was a couple of chats about this is all we were able to do in 6 months. And I can totally understand the frustration. It was gone for 6 months. People want to see bigger, bolder changes. But just one thing I would like to mention, which both of your servers actually helped us with, was scoring, events not working, things not counting. And first of all, like, there were a lot of new metrics created, which is why we did the beta test on your guys' server to make sure it was working. And then when we did the final full revamp of all the other stuff, all that stuff does work, right? and there is still lag, but I know it's really bad right now, Rev, and it could be a byproduct of the fact that we are just getting more people onto the same server at the same time with this. But we've seen reports that I've seen some that lag is better, but things are scoring, lag is better, and we're taking steps in the right direction.
I would say lag
like
was
you said,
better
DJ,
earlier in the day, but right now
Yeah.
it's pretty unplayable.
So yeah, okay. I saw the ship spinning around each other for 20 seconds, Rev.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, like, this is absolutely an iterative process. It is not the final version. I'm glad to hear, and I'm not trying to just make this all sunshine and rainbows. I saw all the other points, and I'm going to be relaying that and taking down basically like top 10 things that should get changed the fastest, right? But I'm glad that objectively, even though you both still feel like they need a lot of work, that rewards are better. And hopefully there's been some sort of indications of just how there is a renewed focus on the content that is currently out. Like, we did big adjustments to Crucible of War, not Crucible of War, sorry, Apex. We did changes to the Cerritos event. We were able to do a beta test for Incursions before releasing the new thing to make sure it was in a good place. And also, I'm happy to say that the team right now is actually working on an improvement to server tick rate. Now, to anyone that doesn't understand what that means, because I need to be educated a little bit as well, basically, server tick rate is how often the server takes sort of inventory on every single thing on a server and where it's at, right? So by decreasing the server tick rate so that it is updating more often, it should decrease lag overall. But I think all of your points are fantastic, and I really appreciate everything that you guys have been saying. And I just want to be clear that this is something that we plan on improving upon month over month, not just.
So I get what you're saying. From the player perspective, a lot of that frustration is going to be, hey, like you said, 6 months, and this is what kind of rolls out. And I guess just to make a targeted question, and again, if he can't answer chat, this is on me. But I've really harped on personally about the rewards. I think the events have had good, bad, in previous Incursions iterations. We've seen it drop as low as the Franklin PvP event. We've seen it be a little bit better. But why is it, just from a game perspective, from y'all's perspective, does there seem to be just I don't want to say unwillingness, but moving so slow when it comes to actual payout of rewards for these type of events? Because surely y'all understand that a PvP based event is going to use a lot of resources. Why is it that y'all aren't willing to make the big step, or does it finally just take getting beat off the head this time around, and the next Incursions actually does have good rewards that we could at least say, hey, these are moving in a significantly positive direction for rewards? Because I would agree that the events and structure has gotten better. Maybe lag is slightly better. The events maybe are better overall, but rewards, really hard to argue they're too much better. Yes, there is more if you're a winning server, because you're getting 3,000 Incursion coins now, which is a little bit more than you were before. But just overall, it just feels like Scopely's sitting on what should be a much more well paid out event.
I honestly wish. Oh, go ahead, DJ.
I don't think DJ was talking. I think he was just going in and out in his car.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, Rev, and I don't have the answer to that, right? Like, all of the ones that are unscripted, I can give you my thoughts and how I see things just from working here, and it's that this is the only sort of event of its kind in Star Trek Fleet Command. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing when it came out, was this is the first time we've done, but that was also 1 year ago too. So it's not like Incursions are new anymore. Incursions launched June of last year, or maybe July. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. So we're right at 11 or 12 months in.
It was July, I think.
So I mean, that's a long time. So I can't even use it's a new mechanic thing either.
I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think that there's just, with all of the changes being made this time, it was just trying to be as safe as possible with everything. Right, and I can understand.
That was exactly kind of what I was thinking. Rev, to paraphrase your question, it's Scopely, why are you being scared to be bold?
Yeah.
Again, kind of coining that phrase from Ripper, like, let's get stupid, right? Like, let's take a real chance. And what is the worst that could happen? Okay, maybe you
we break
accidentally
all of the economies. That's the worst thing that happens.
Hold on.
No.
On your economy note, real quick. In terms of breaking your economy.
That was more of a joke, but I'm just
I know,
saying.
but you say it as a joke, but at the same time, the economy discussion is very real at Scopely HQ. How would, for example, giving decent, or in this case, really high tritanium payouts hurt the game economy when most players are spending that amount of tritanium just to participate? So I get the idea of not wanting to overload the economy or resources, but at the same time, you're talking about players like myself, my Pylum, 120 million to repair. And if you're a G5 player, billions to repair.
That's assuming that everyone is participating, which you have said.
But that's the goal, though, right? And to get them to do that.
I think it's not fair to. I think it's not fair to ever assume that everyone is going to want to participate.
And I get that, but
by the same token, though, Echo, if they aren't participating, then you're not paying the rewards.
Exactly. That's why it's locked behind SMSs and leaderboards.
That's not true, because if the whole server wins, they get those rewards whether they participated or not.
Okay, but those rewards have nothing to do with tritanium, and they're super low anyway. We're literally talking about 5 epic officer shards. That's not a big part of the, like Bubba Joe in the chat was talking about, the par steel rewards. We're just talking about, like, if you are participating, you should be compensated for your activity in something like Incursions, which, as you just said, is a grand Star Trek Fleet Command event. If you want it to be grand, get stupid.
And for the record, it doesn't even need to pay back. Like, I know that players would like for it to pay back everything we spent and more, but it doesn't even need to be that, truthfully. It just needs to be better. I mean, it needs to be something. And I feel like this is classic Scopely, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. You've said it before too, even on this show, that sometimes you guys are a little bit more conservative when something comes out. We're a little bit slower with it because we want to see how it's going to play out, and we'll make things better over time. To Rev's point, we've had the time. Like, we know how this is working.
Yeah.
And to be this big grand once a month kind of spectacular, this showdown, to bring glory to your server, like, okay, let's bring some freaking glory. Let's bring billions of tritanium. Let's bring some reward. Let's bring some strike team. I think this is an area where you guys have traditionally been timid, and I understand, because that is, I acknowledge it because that's what you guys do. I don't fully understand it, but that is how you guys have done it. But this comes back to, again, and I've quoted Ripper like 5 times tonight, be bold, man. Like, let's go bungee jumping. Like, let's go up to the top of this cliff and just freaking go. Don't think about it. Just do it.
I want to say one thing before you respond, Nico. Think of it this way, too.
No, I was literally going to just say, that's scary, though, DJ, and play a joke on the bungee jumping thing.
Well,
from
this perspective, hold on, DJ, let me throw it. Just do it. Say this. Just do it once. Run 1 Incursions where y'all significantly increase everything and see, do you get better participation? Do you get better feedback? And does it result in what you're looking for? And if it doesn't, then me and DJ were wrong the whole time. And all you did was give 1 day in the history of the game where you got stupid with rewards. Does that, in the grand scheme, hurt anything? Because it is 1 day.
And for the record, I'm not talking 50 epic shards. Okay, we're not talking anything that stupid, although you can get that stupid.
Please, yeah, get that stupid.
You would have no problem if we went that way.
All right, I'm not. We're not even talking that stupid. Like, the way that Rev and I are talking, we're telling you guys to be stupid. We want you guys to be stupid compared to the timid that you guys are. But really, like, that level of stupid is probably normal, or what is minimally expected by the community. And I do feel that you guys are very cautious. You always are, and I understand that. But this is meant to be bigger, and I think you can make it bigger by being bigger, bolder,
Yeah, I mean,
Get buff, man.
we're the
Get buff.
same company that every month gives an officer leaderboard.
I hear everything you guys are saying.
So, all right. But
Thank you.
Okay. But we've got an hour and a half, which is a little bit longer than we normally go. But this was the first day of the game in like 3 months, right? Eco, do you have any closing remarks about just one, player base, where we're at, communication, all the topics we talked about? Closing remarks.
Could we show them that clip real quick?
Yeah, we definitely can. I can pull.
So a sneak peek at the at when DJ and many of the community members came to the Scopely office. And this is just the very first draft. It's a small clip of it, but this is just some of the stuff that, you know, myself and Beck and others want to do more of in the future.
Next question. What type of fish does Captain Picard keep in his ready room?
Koi. Whale.
No sound.
Goldfish.
Good guess, but incorrect.
They've got sound.
Would you like to guess?
Oh.
Cop. It's a lionfish.
That is correct.
Because it's cool.
It's a very cool fish.
It is.
Yeah, I actually really like
black
fish.
and white, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. I just played it for them. Y'all couldn't hear, but they got to see y'all's trivia that y'all did while DJ was there.
Yeah, we got a bunch of different people that work here at Scopely to have Scopely versus sort of the litter box trivia. It was a really, really cool, fun event, and we're hoping to do a lot more stuff like that in the future. And so I just sort of like the full video will be coming out soon. That was the very first rough cut. And yeah, we're just really excited. And essentially, closing remarks is we want to continue to do more cool stuff like that. We want to continue to communicate and be better at communicating. It was nice to be back.
DJ, what about you, my friend?
I do want to thank you, Mr. President, for making the time to come back. I think it was
did you
really
say President?
Yeah,
I'm
did.
sorry, Emperor Echo, and because promotion and everything. So yes, Emperor Echo. I do appreciate you carving out the time. I'm grateful that you came back. I think it's good for the community to hear from you. I also want to say thanks to those members of the Scopely team, be it game design, live ops, management, engineering, anybody who has worked with the content creation team to make changes, and we look forward to continuing that relationship and continuing to drive that. And Rev, I obviously want to thank you for hosting us tonight, and I want to thank the community too, in a big way. I haven't been able to watch the chat. I really, really wanted to, but community, know that your initiatives are why Rev and I do what we do.
Yeah.
And when, listen, sometimes we don't always see eye to eye. I know Rev and I don't see eye to eye on everything, and sometimes I don't see eye to eye with the community, and I know Rev doesn't see eye to eye with the community on everything. But at the end of the day,
Three of us don't even see eye to eye on everything.
No, we don't. But at the end of the day, like, we really appreciate you trusting us to kind of be that intermediary with Echo and with Scopely, because, and I've said this before, Rev, and I know that you have as well. Without the community, we have nothing to work for, and I really am kind of feeling gushy about the community here lately, and I just really want to thank you guys for being there for us as content creators and giving us kind of a purpose. There's no reason to create content if there's no audience, and we really, really do appreciate your support and you watching tonight and watching on playback and doing the surveys and providing the feedback. I just think that it can't be undersold, Rev, that the people make it worth doing, and I want to thank all of them as well. Thank you, Rev, for having us tonight.
There wouldn't be STFC without everyone here. I mean, I wouldn't have a job. We wouldn't have these bonds and things like all of this relationships that we've built. It wouldn't be possible without everyone that plays Star Trek Fleet Command.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.